we should all have our R&D notes from yesterday open in front of us. Now, yesterday we looked at the two biggest accounts. Well, the longest one in the liquidation account, and then the most difficult one in the estate duty account. Today we need to look at the other three accounts. Now, I said to you it's a lot more simpler, these other three accounts. I need us to follow, and as per usual, make notes, ladies and gentlemen. It will obviously help you tremendously when it comes to studying for the exam. So I want us all to open on page, let me just make sure I have the page number correct here. I want us all to open on page 8 of the L&D notes. That is the distribution account. It is the third account we will be looking at. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do is I'm going to go through these final three accounts, the distribution account, the recapitulation account, and the income and expenditure account. When I am done going through those three accounts, I will then open the floor for questions on any of those three accounts. All right, so we're all on page 8 by the distribution account. Again, ladies and gentlemen, you see, just like my estate duty, I have a sort of a description side, and then I have my negative and positive. So we're sort of following that same format. Now, the distribution account, we started off with the wording balance available for distribution brought forward. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you recall what we're trying to achieve here, we are now taking what is left after we paid our creditors and after we paid SARS. Whatever is left, we're going to just distribute now in terms of marriage, legatees, and heirs. So if you have a look at your liquidation account, specifically with regards to page, the last page of the liquidation was page 5. The bottom of page 5 there, you had your balance available for distribution in your liquidation account. That was your total assets minus your total liabilities minus estate duty, and that gave us the balance available for distribution. In other words, what's left after we've paid those that are ranked first. Now we can, that figure that you see there, balance available for distribution, you're going to take that figure and carry it forward into your distribution account. So that is your balance available for distribution from your liquidation account that you are simply just placing here into your distribution account. In other words, brought forward. We are bringing it into that account. And now, ladies and gentlemen, very simply, we take whatever amount we have available for distribution and disperse it in terms of the will or in terms of intestate succession. But before we can do that, we need to remember that marriage is ranked first. So if you look underneath there, I said 2 surviving spouse. All right, follow my X's. My X's is where the figure should come in. All right, so on account to a married in community of property, you would give half of the deceased or half of that balance away. If you were married out of community of property, then your spouse would not have an impact over here. I mean, then there's nothing to give to your spouse then. If you are married with the accrual system, then obviously whatever calculation is for accrual would come over there. But in other words, you've got to give your spouse whatever is due to them because marriage is next in line. Every time we give something away, we say balance available for distribution again. In other words, we say how much is left. So let's say for argument's sake, our balance available for distribution was 2 million rand and we were married in community of property. We'd have to give half of that 2 million away, meaning we'll have 1 million left for the balance available for distribution. Once we are done giving away to our spouse, next in line is legatees. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you'll have to look at your exam question. If there is intestate law, then obviously there will be no legatees because legatees are people who are given something specifically. You can only be given something specifically if there was a will, and the will dictates that someone must get something specifically. So for argument's sake, let's say the will said X must get 100,000 rand. Then X would be a legatee because it's something specific. So we go and we give X 100,000 rand. Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is hypothetically. I mean, we don't know what questions would come in the exam. But nevertheless, we give away to the legatee whatever they're entitled to. Again, once we have given away,
we say again, what is our balance available for distribution? In other words, how much is left now after we have sorted our legatees out as well. And then last in line is our heirs, to the heirs. Now, perhaps there was two heirs in the exam question, A and B. Whatever is left of that deceased estate, you will now distribute amongst your heirs. The heirs you will always divide equally between the heirs if there is a will, and we have went through intestate law on Tuesday. So if this was intestate succession, you would have to do your intestate law calculations to determine who is entitled to what. But quite simply, once you have given to your heirs get in what is left of the deceased estate. We say the residue of the deceased estate. So we give everything that's left to them. In other words, we finish with a nil balance available for distribution. Right. So just to recap, we take our balance available for distribution down from our liquidation account. We carry it into our distribution account. That we then divide in ranking of marriage, legatees, and heirs. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not to say there's going to be a marriage in your exam question. Then you would skip that step. It's not to say there's going to be a legatee. Then you would skip that step. Right? So give to your spouse what they're entitled to. Give to the legatee next what they're entitled to. And whatever is left, you distribute amongst your heirs until there is nothing left, until you finish with nil. It is as simple as that, ladies and gentlemen. So at this stage, you know, we actually have a clear picture of who's getting what. Our liquidation account told us what our liabilities, what our creditors are getting. We calculated what SARS may or may not get with the estate duty. Once we were done with that, we took what is left after we've paid all those people, and we distributed in ranking of marriage, legatees, and heirs in our distribution account until there was nothing left. So at this stage, we have a clear picture over how much each person is going to receive in the deceased estate. All right, that is the distribution account. Just to make mention of those who joined in a bit late, I did mention we'll be going through these final three accounts, and when we are done with it, I will open the floor to questions on these final three accounts. All right, the next account I want to have a look at is the recapitulation account. So you can go to page 9 for me, please. Okay. So on the recapitulation account, you can see we start off, well, first of all, you can see I did an extra column over here, right? I've got the description column, then I've got another column, and then I have my negative and positive column. Ladies and gentlemen, the last two columns you see is always negative and positive. If there is an additional column, then I'm just using it for calculation purposes. Sort of like the same concept as what we did in the liquidation account. So you see we start off with the sentence, cash assets and assets reduced to cash. Now I want us to think about that. Cash assets and assets reduced to cash. Assets reduced to cash, is that not things that were sold? Cash assets, is that not things that were cash already? So our mind must start thinking, another word for cash assets could possibly be collected. Another word for assets reduced to cash would be realized. Everything that's been collected and everything that's been realized. Here's where your notes become important, ladies and gentlemen. You will now go back to your liquidation account. And you will go have a look at your assets in the liquidation account. For example, let's have a look at the assets in the example of the liquidation account we did here. So I'm going back to page 2 now, and I'm looking at my liquidation account. So now remember, we sort of fabricated what was awarded, what was collected, and what was realized in this account. But let's have a look. And this is where you see the importance of numbering the assets were. You will remember we numbered in our item column. We numbered each and every asset. So if you look at item 1, that house, Earth 678, we awarded it. Okay, so that is not cash, because everything that is not cash, we awarded. Look at our next item, item 2, the vehicle. Okay, you see we awarded that as well. Again, that is not cash. Go to the next page. Ladies and gentlemen, just a reminder to make sure we are all muted. I'm getting some sounds in the background. We look at our third item, household furniture and effects. You can see we awarded that as well. So that is also not. We look at our fourth item. That is the firearm. Again, we awarded that. So that is not cash. Next one, item 5, coins. We realized. Okay, so item 5 is cash because we've realized it. That is things that were reduced to cash. So we keep a note. Item 5 was cash. Item 6 was the private company shares. You can see we realized that as well. So item 6 is also cash. Just one moment, ladies and gentlemen. My document just kicked me out. I'm just going back into it. Okay, so we were at item 6 and we said that private company shares you realized. So item 5 and 6 is cash. Item 7 was the public company. Okay, I see we awarded that. So that is also not cash. Item 8, well, everything in claims in favor will always be cash, ladies and gentlemen. So item 8 was money in the bank account. We collected it. So that's a cash asset. Item 9 was the Southern Health policy. We collected it. Ladies and gentlemen, someone is not muted. Can we please make sure you're muted? Zuko, I think it's Nozuko. You are not muted. Can you please mute for us? Thank you very much. All right. Item 9 we said was collected, and item 10, the Liberty Life policy, was also collected. So in other words, everything that is realized or collected from the liquidation account under assets obviously means that is cash. Everything awarded is not cash. So we said item 5, 6, 8, 9, and 10 was cash. So now we go back to our recapitulation account on page 9, and underneath cash assets and assets reduced to cash, we'll write there item 5, 6, item 8, item 9, and item 10. And you'll see my X's there on the first column, my calculation column. All right. So you're going to put down the value of those assets. You take it straight from the liquidation account. Item 5, 6, 8, 9, and 10. That was everything that was realized or collected. You then add it up. You add all of your cash assets up, and you can see I drew an arrow to where you must put it in. You're putting it in your positive column on the right-hand side. That figure that you put there will then resemble how much of your assets is cash. I mean, your total assets in your liquidation account could have been 3 million for argument's sake, but perhaps only 1 million of that is cash, or whatever the case may be. But we've just got to determine how much cash is there. All right. Very important, that aspect. But this is a twofold account. The one aspect is to determine how much cash we have. The second aspect is to determine if it's enough. Again, ladies and gentlemen, just like the estate duty account, I am not giving anyone anything at this stage. I am just having a look if I have enough cash to pay those people who need to be paid in cash. I mentioned to you already that there are 3 institutions that need to be paid in cash. That is your liabilities, estate duty, and any possible cash legatees. All right. Those 3 aspects must always be paid in cash. So I now know how much cash I have. Underneath there, you'll see I write 2 liabilities, 2 estate duty, and 2 cash legatees. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I think I just lost you there for a second. Let me just repeat that. You'll see I write there 2 liabilities, 2 estate duty, and 2 cash legatees. I see there is a little area,
You know,
ladies and gentlemen.
it's really nice. It's just really big.
Good. You're home.
It's basically a burger patty.
With
vegetables.
Gloria. Thank you for reminding me. Good, you're caught up. Hang on.
Thank you. All right. Now, these liabilities, this estate duty and this cash legatees, the X's I've drawn in the wrong column I see here. I've put them in the calculation column. You can just move those X's to the minus column, in other words, the middle column, all right? The first column I only use to do calculations. So when we give money away, it means we are minusing, right? So we can put those X's in the middle column, the negative column. So those liabilities, where would I get that from? You'd get it from your liquidation account. You would go have a look what your total liabilities is in your liquidation account and put it down there. Estate duty, we calculated estate duty. You would go and put down how much your estate duty was. The third possible person or institution that needs to be paid in cash is your cash legatees. Have a look at your exam question. Was there any people that the will said must specifically get money in cash? Then we've got to include them because that's what the will said. They want that person to get money, right? Now, ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, what we have done is we have calculated how much cash we have, and we have indicated the amount of money that needs to be paid to those who has to be paid in cash, being the liabilities, estate duty, and cash legatees. We can now minus our liabilities, estate duty, and cash legatees from our cash assets and assets reduced to cash. We minus those three from our cash assets and assets reduced to cash, and we are either going to get a positive or a negative answer. You can see underneath there, I write cash surplus or cash shortfall. If you get a positive answer, you will have a cash surplus figure. In other words, you have enough cash to pay those who need to be paid in cash. If you get a cash shortfall, that would mean you got a negative answer. In other words, you do not have enough cash to pay your liabilities, estate duty, and cash legatees. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in practice, if we got a cash shortfall, what we would then go and do is we would have to go and sell some assets. That's the only way to sort it out. We'd then have to go and sell some assets so that we have enough cash to pay those people who need to be paid in cash. So that is all we are trying to achieve here on the recapitulation account. Simply just to figure out if we have enough cash to pay those three entities. So just to repeat, we started off with cash assets and assets reduced to cash. I said that is everything that was realized or collected from the liquidation account under assets. In other words, that was everything that was cash in our assets. We listed all of them. I think we had item 5, 6, 8, 9, and 10. We listed that in our calculation column. We added it up and we put the figure on the far right. From that figure, we minused our liabilities, estate duty, and cash legatees. Liabilities and estate duty, those figures we got from our liquidation account. Cash legatees depends if the exam question says is a cash legatee. And we're either going to get a positive or a negative answer. Cash surplus being positive, and obviously cash shortfall being negative. And if it was negative, in reality, it would mean we'd have to sell some assets. So that is your recapitulation account. Done and dusted. Let's go on to the final account on page 10. This is our income and expenditure accounts. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the income and expenditure account. I've spoken quite a bit about this account already, but just to recap, this is all monies that were made or lost after date of death of the testator. Just to repeat, if you remember from page 1 of your notes, I said to you, when you sell assets, that is nothing for the income and expenditure account. You always use the sold for price in your liquidation account. This income and expenditure account is money that turns into more money or into less money after date of death. It has nothing to do with the sale of assets. I also mentioned if you put a figure in here, that you have put in any other account, then you have made a mistake. All the figures in here have nothing to do with the other 4 accounts. This is the only account in the L&D that is completely separate from the other 4, that does not rely on figures from the other 4 accounts, in other words. Okay, so if we have a look here, you start off with your income. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you'll have to look at your exam question. Let us say, for example, they said you have 500,000 Rand in your FNB savings account on the day you die. 2 months later, we close down the account and there is 520,000 Rand in it. You've got to think, how does 500 become 520,000 Rand? Okay, there was interest that accumulated. Now remember, with money in a bank, you always use the amount of the money in the bank as per date of death in your liquidation account. So under your claims in favor, this bank account, you would have put 500,000 Rand there in your liquidation account because that's how much money you had the day you died. But the 20,000 that grew on interest after date of death, you would put under income in your income and expenditure account. So you would say what bank account it is and you would say interest. And for example, you would put your 20,000 Rand there in your positive column. Again, we're just running with a negative and a positive column. Ladies and gentlemen, they can give you 1 example of interest or 10 examples of interest. It doesn't matter. You list all the money that got turned into more money after date of death. You list under your income. When you're done, you obviously have your total income, which I would put there in my tram lines. Underneath that, the next heading is expenditure. So what losses did we incur after date of death? Now, ladies and gentlemen, I said to you that if you have an income after date of death, you automatically have at least 1 expenditure, which is your executor's remuneration. Remember, you as executor are entitled to 6% of any income made after date of death. So you'll see, I write the executor's remuneration, and I say 6% of total income. And we've got to put that figure down. So, I mean, if our income after date of death was 20,000, what's 6% of that? That's about 1,200 bucks, I think. Then you would put 1,200 Rand there, which is your fees for bringing that income in after date of death. Underneath that, I just gave another example of possible expenditure to look out for. You'll see I have an Absa Bank credit card. And I mean, in the same breath, now I know we had 500,000 that turned into 520,000. They could also say you had money in the bank. Let's say there was 5,000 Rand, but they only closed down the account 2 or 3 months later after date of death. And in such a scenario, when they closed down the account, there was no longer 5,000 Rand in it. There was now 4,500 Rand in it. Obviously, we have now then lost money after date of death. And that could be through money owed on credit, or it could be usually through bank charges. Bank charges would be a main culprit for losing money after date of death. So I'll go put how much we lost after date of death over there. And then obviously we have our total expenditure. Now what you do, ladies and gentlemen, you go total income minus total expenditure is going to give us a balance available for distribution. So maybe our total income was 20,000 and our total expenditure was 2,000. So our balance available for distribution would then be 18,000 Rand, just hypothetically. Now, I want us to think practically about it. If we made 18,000 Rand for the deceased estate after date of death, have we distributed this 18,000 Rand anywhere to any of the heirs or the marriage or whatever the case may be? And the answer is no. If you recall from our distribution account we looked at now, we distributed our balance from our liquidation account. This 18,000 Rand, hypothetically again, has not been accounted for anywhere. We obviously can't pocket this money. We've got it now distributed. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll distribute it in the same way you distributed your distribution account. You'll go in the ranking of marriage and heirs. Now, we learned marriage, legatees, heirs, but I want us to remember, if your legatee was supposed to get 100,000 Rand and you gave the legatee 100,000 Rand in your distribution account, you can't give the legatee more money because they was only supposed to get a fixed sum. So usually over here, the distribution would be to the spouse. If there was a marriage in community of property, you would give half away, and then the remainder would go to the heirs. So in my example now, we had a marriage in community of property. So if we had an 18,000 balance, we'd get half to the spouse, meaning we'd have to give 9,000 away. There would then be 9,000 Rand left. The legatee we already sorted in the distribution account. Then I said the heirs were A and B for argument's sake. So I would have to give A and B the 9,000 Rand. They'll have to share in it. In other words, 4,500 Rand each. But the point being, when you are done, you must have a nil balance again. Because remember, the heirs share in whatever is left. So just to recap that income and expenditure account, figures in this account has not been illustrated anywhere else. Look out for money that becomes more or less after date of death, not assets that are sold. Very importantly, ladies and gentlemen, you put your income in after date of death, you minus your expenditure from there. And remember, if you have an income, you also automatically have at least one expenditure, the executor's remuneration. So you minus your expenditure from your income and you get a balance available for distribution. And obviously that balance has not been distributed previously to anyone because these are new figures. You will then need to distribute it the same way you distribute it in your distribution account. Look at marriage first and thereafter look at the heirs. Give the remainder away so that you have a nil balance. Ladies and gentlemen, those are the other three accounts: distribution account, recapitulation account, as well as income and expenditure. Right, okay. Let's open the floor for questions on these final three accounts.
Hi, Kyle.
Hi, yes, I'm listening.
You are here. Oh. How are you?
Good at yourself.
Good, thank you. I'm assuming that the recapitulation account, you do that before the distribution account.
There's no specific ranking or order of doing it. You know, the thing is, when you do this in real life, before you even do the recapitulation account, if I've got to be dead serious with you, I would already know if I have enough cash or not. You know, so it wouldn't. The order says you must do your liquidation and estate duty account first. There's no particular order for the remaining three. So I do my recapitulation account fourth. The reason being is my recapitulation account would always balance out because I would know if there's a shortfall. I would know if I needed to sell assets, you know, in practice. But for exam purposes, yeah, there's no specific order. And yeah, it wouldn't make a difference ultimately. If you had no idea if you had enough cash, let's run on that theory. You don't have any idea. Then I would obviously advise you do your recapitulation account first. But in practice, you always know how much cash you have and if it's enough. Because after your liquidation account, you already know who must be paid in cash. And you know how much money is sitting in your deceased estate bank account. So yeah, it wouldn't make a difference in reality.
Hi, Kyle.
Yeah.
For the distribution account, where you have to the heirs, if there's a marriage in community of property, do we still consider the child share for the spouse?
Yes, always. The marriage has no impact on the heirs.
Okay.
That is obviously just for intestate law, eh?
Yes, for interstate. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Good afternoon, Carl.
Yeah, I heard a gentleman, then I heard a lady. Let's go in that order.
Thank you,
All
Carl.
right,
I just wanted to find
Cynthia.
out on the income and expenditure account, the amount that you put in there under income, is that now initially one has to open an account for the estate. If the deceased had 2,000 rands or anything more than 1,000, you'd have to open a bank account. This balance that comes here under income, is that the very same amount that was there on the deceased account that you opened the bank account with, or is it just interest that accumulates afterwards?
So that'll be interest that accumulates afterwards. So any interest that accumulates thereafter will will come into the income and expenditure account. The amount that was in the account the day the deceased passed away, that will come in our liquidation account. But any interest thereafter is for the income and expenditure account.
Thank you. So it means that the income under the income and expenditure account does not include the amount with which the account was opened with. We are talking about whatever interest was, came afterwards.
There we go. You've got it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, Carl.
Yes.
Can you please kindly re-explain where we get the amount under the recapitulation account, where we get, because you indicated with an arrow here. So you said that it was meant to be from, I think, the negative. So all under items, I don't know if you have the document in front of you. You put crosses on the wrong column. You said it was supposed to be under the negative column, right?
That's
But
the liability, state duty, and cash legatees. Just those three must be under the negative column.
Sir, what I'm asking is, at the beginning, you said that there is a certain amount we're supposed to get from an account. I don't know if you said the liquidation account, and that we're supposed to put it at the top. So you see the first cross that you have under recapitulation account, by the positive side.
Yes.
Yes. So I wanted to know where do we get that amount? Because you did say that we get that amount from somewhere.
Yeah. So if you recall, we went to the liquidation account and we had a look at our assets. Remember, we numbered every asset we had in the liquidation account. I think we had 10 assets.
Yes.
So you have a look what assets in that liquidation account was cash. So that will be everything that was realized or collected, because that was cash. Everything awarded was non-cash assets. So we had a look and we saw from our practical example, items 5, 6, 8, 9, and 10 were realized or collected. So we put those items down in our calculation column. You'll see there's 5 X's there on the left-hand side. What we do then, after we've listed all those assets, the value of those assets that are cash, we add those 5 items up. And the total figure we put on the far right-hand side by the X where I put the arrow towards.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I understand now.
Perfect.
Hi, Kyle.
Hi.
I just wanted to ask you, how are marks awarded for L&D account?
Well, that'll be up to the memo, which I don't have with me, but you would get a mark.
Can you give us an idea?
Yeah, well, let's say for your liquidation account, for every asset you list, you get a mark. Same with your liabilities. Basically for everything you do, you get a mark. Literally for everything you do.
And what?
That's
the total of the section.
The total.
Usually.
Yeah, you see, the thing is, let's say you're obviously very dependent on the total, your total assets, your total liabilities. You keep using that figure everywhere. So if you get your total assets wrong in your liquidation account, it's obviously wrong. But I would assume that if you correctly carry that figure into your other accounts, they won't negative mark you. And they will mark you correct for taking the figure from the correct place. I mean, otherwise, everything you're going to do is going to be wrong. So they don't sort of mark
so we get
you
part
that way.
marks.
Yeah, they won't negative mark you like that.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Carl.
Thank you.
Hi, Carl.
Yes, lady, then heard a gentleman.
Hi, Carl.
We'll go in there.
Hi, Carl. Yes. Just a quick question. With an investment account, I'm not sure if this was asked yesterday or the day before, but with an investment account, how do you deal with that as an asset? Is it more or less sort of like the shares, or is it like a bank account?
So the investment account, you would actually treat in a similar way to you treat your bank account as a claim in favor, because it's a cash investment, so it's cash already. So yeah, it'll be a claim in favor. in your liquidation account.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, the gen-
Hi, Carl.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, Carl.
All right, so we have the gentleman first now that asked Nana, then I heard another gentleman, then I heard a lady. So we'll go in that order. Go for it.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks, Carl. Okay, there's a few things, right? Firstly, the liquidation distribution account shows balances as at date of death. If the deceased died and there was 10,000 in the account, but after date of death, the spouse took out 5,000 for funeral expenses or whatever it is, how do we show that early advance to the heir? Does it have to show in the liquidation distribution account, or would you that show on the cash reconciliation statement that you'll do separately? Or is there a specific place in the L&D that you can pull that through?
Yeah, you see, that's obviously a different scenario because that's not money lost. That's money used for under liabilities for expenses as such. So that money that was taken to be used for funeral expenses, I would still list the full value of the asset. So let's say there was 10,000 Rand at date of death, but they pulled 5,000 Rand from the account for the funeral.
So it balances.
So I would list
So
in
you
my
put it
asset
through as a
column.
liability as an early advance, for example.
Yeah. I put the 10,000 by the assets and the 5,000 by the liabilities.
Brilliant. And secondly, if you're doing your L&D, you get to balance for distribution and it's a negative, indicating that the estate is insolvent. Can we as executors or attorney executors proceed in terms of the Administration of Estates Act, or does that estate have to be returned to the master and insolvency practitioner need to be appointed, or can we still administer insolvent estates? Is there a provision in the Act for that?
So you would still be the executor of the estate, but you'd have to write to the creditors and notify them. And it's only the creditors who can direct you whether to revert to insolvency or to proceed with the administration of the estate.
Okay, perfect.
So
and
that
lastly,
decision-
I'm not going to take up much more time. So we can, and I'm just going to read up separately on that. That's fine. The last question I have, and this is just for law of succession in general, not just the L&D account. I think I asked a question the previous day. So let's say there's a legatee, right? There's a specific bequest of a property, but there's a bequest price, a condition that the legatee has to pay, let's say 100,000 for that property. And that legatee repudiates that bequest. He doesn't want to pay that 100K, or you can't afford it. So obviously that house will fall within the residue. However, that legatee is also a 50% residual heir. Will they still inherit in terms of the residue, or are they disqualified completely from inheriting that asset?
No, they would still be able to inherit in the residue, because the reason for not being a legatee was not because they repudiated from inheriting, but because they repudiated because of impossibility of performance. This they can still inherit as an heir.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks, Carl. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Good stuff.
All right, can I get in, please?
Yes, you're next, sir.
Thank you very much. Coming back to this income and expenditure account, you see, all these things are being handled by human beings, are being handled by people, and people can always make some mistakes. Say in the unlikely event, after when everything has been sorted, everything has been finalized, it is discovered that the deceased had an account at another bank and it was quite a lot of money. What would be happening to that money?
Would that be after you completely wound up the deceased estate?
Hello?
Yes, sir. Would that be after you have completely wound up the deceased estate?
Yes, when the deceased the estate has been wiped out.
Yeah. So if the estate's been wound up, you discover that bank account, you need to notify the master's office, and they will reopen the estate and allow you to then go and distribute that money in the bank account to the heirs.
All right. Thank you.
Cool. Then I heard a lady.
Hi, Carl. Can you hear me?
Seems like there's two ladies. You can both go.
Hello? Sorry, does my mic work?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So I was just looking over this activity that you sent, and there was a momentum policy which goes into the deceased estate because it gives a surrender value. But it says 100,000 Rand unpaid premiums. Will those unpaid premiums be in the LAD, in the liquidation accounts or in the expenditure accounts?
Will be in the liquidation account. So those policies that will reflect as a liability in the liquidation account.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Cool. The other lady?
Hi, Carl. It's Tanya. I've got 3 questions.
Okay.
In the distribution account, do you have to specify or describe the spouse, the legatees, and the heirs?
Yeah. Please do that. That is the correct way to do it. So, and the way we describe people is threefold. Obviously, you have your name, surname. That's the one aspect. The second aspect is the identity number. And the third aspect is their relationship to the deceased. So you would say surviving spouse of the deceased, surviving child of the deceased, for argument's sake.
Okay, thank you. And then I want to find out if there are debit orders going off the bank accounts that are still going off after date of death. Will that be listed in the income and expenditure account or under liabilities?
No, that will be liabilities in the liquidation.
Right. And then my last question is, what if your expenses are more than your income? What happens then?
In your income and expenditure account or in your liquidation account?
No, income and expenditure account.
Okay, well, then we have a bit of a problem. You know, in such a case, if your expenditure exceeds your income, remember your expenditure is like your liabilities, say it's a creditor. So then we'll have to go and make a for it in our liquidation account and set that money aside, meaning there would be less money to distribute to our heirs, the distribution account.
Okay, so then you won't be able to do any distribution until this is settled.
100% correct.
Okay, thank you.
Hello.
Oh,
Hello.
Hi, Carl.
I think I got 3 gentlemen over there, so you can all go for it.
All right. Mine is quite short. So in your income and expenditure account, if you end up with a surplus there, prior to distribution, isn't there a tax implication there as well? Because you've paid a state duty tax. Now, isn't the income tax to be paid on your net income in your income and expenditure account?
Only if that would then make a difference to your estate duty. Eh? I mean, if your estate duty, remember, most people fall quite horribly in the negative, their estate duty.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't make any issue over there. But if that income is derived after date of death and you were paying estate duty, then that figure will need to be factored in.
Okay, so let me just understand. If the estate duty calculation turned out to be rather negative, all right. So in other words, there's no estate duty to be paid after the 3.5 million Rand allowance and all of that. So does that mean there's no need to submit an income tax return on the net income that has been derived in your income and expenditure account?
No, you would still return it, but it wouldn't. There would be no taxable. You know, none of it would be taxable, but you'd still return it just to show.
All right.
Hi, Kyle.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. There was a gentleman, and then I heard a lady. Let's finish the gentleman first.
Hi, Carl. Raj speaking. I just want to know something. I've been looking at it's actually got nothing to do with your lecture. I just want to find out because I'm having difficulty on the chat to finding out when we are writing this subject world's estates. If one looks at the program on the first page, I see our lectures are fine. We're running our lectures. We're finishing today. It shows our exam for vets is on the 14th of July. So I spoke to some of our legal guys and they reckon no, it was the first semester. I'm a bit confused now. But I see due dates on online time assessments. Worlds and Estates is showing it is due before the 31st of October. So I don't know whether you can assist us in the matter, yeah?
Also, I don't have any role to play in any of that. So I have no idea when you guys are writing things like that. What I can suggest is 2 things. Nana will have a 5-minute break. You can ask on the group. If no one can help you, then alternatively, please contact Zukiswa. She'll be able to notify.
Okay, thank you.
Hi,
Cool.
Kyle.
Yes.
Can you please take us through an example of how you would need to account for the expenditure in the income and expenditure account? So if the expenditure is more than the income, so what would need to be done in that case?
In such a scenario, the expenditure is ranked above marriage, legacies, and heirs. It is ranked there with what you call with creditors or liabilities. So you would have to account for the money. So you have to set money aside to pay for this expenditure, and then what is
Sorry,
left.
Kyle, you're breaking a bit. You're breaking a bit. Can you please repeat what you said?
Okay, just to notify. I see not everyone's muted, ladies and gentlemen. Just remember, if you're not speaking, just make sure you're muted. Otherwise, we are getting some sounds in the background. All right. So if your expenditure exceeds your income, you will need to pay for that money from the deceased estate, meaning there will actually be less money left for your heirs in the distribution account. So that's how you would practically deal with it. You would need to account for it, and then you would have to adjust your distribution account. You'll often see you can't just write your L&D, you can't just do your L&D account from beginning to end and it's perfect. Often you might come across issues and you'll have to go and adjust figures. So you'll need to make provision then to pay this, and then the heirs would ultimately get less in the distribution account.
Okay. Okay.
Hello?
I'm listening.
Yeah. Going back to the liquidation account. It is important, it is very much imperative that the property description must be in full. Are we going to be allowed to do thumbs up when we sit for the examinations, or the property description will be provided?
You might need to thumbs up, eh? They might not give you all the information, then you'll need to fabricate it. And yes, it is important that you describe it in full then, even if you have to fabricate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, Kyle.
Hello,
Rachel speaking. Yes. Kyle, I wanted to ask, since Bitcoins are quite popular, if you get a Bitcoin, would we ever get a Bitcoin question? And if we do, where do I put it? Do I put it under assets, and how do I describe it?
Okay, so if you get a Bitcoin in the exam, that'll come under assets, under movables. So you treat it the same way you treated coins under Kruger-Rands. You know, so you'd have coins, and then your explanation of your coins would be a Bitcoin. And then you would put it, you would put it there under movables in your asset column. So I think it was item, I'm just checking for you in the liquidation account. I think it was item 5 in the liquidation account. You see I had coins there. Then my example was Kruger-Rands. That could easily have been Bitcoin. And you would have put it over there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Hi,
Cool.
Kyle.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to go back to the income and expenditure account. So where it says income, the example that was used was that, okay, so if the deceased had 1,000 Rand at date of death, and then that accumulated to 1,800 Rand, do I put a figure of 1,800 Rand, or do I put 800 Rand, the interest that accumulated?
Yeah, so the 800 Rand interest accumulated would be in your income and expenditure account. And the initial 1,000 Rand that was there, that 1,000 Rand will be in your liquidation account because that was at date of death.
Oh, so I just put the interest figure.
That's it. Only what became more or less after date of death, not the initial amount that was there on date of death.
Okay, thank you.
Cool.
Evening, Mr. Kidsman.
Cool. Ladies and gents, we'll do 1 or 2 more questions. I'm listening to you.
Mr. Keatsman, I would like to ask, based on the if the expenditure is more than the income again. I couldn't hear you properly. I had some interference on my side. Could you kindly just repeat again?
So look, for exam purposes, there's nothing you need to do there, all right? But in reality, if the expenditure is more than the income, you will need to account for it. You'll need to pay from the estate for that expenditure. And that would actually mean that there is less money available for the heirs at the end of the day. So you would actually have to adjust your distribution account there.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Cool.
Hi,
Good evening.
Kyle.
I'm listening.
Good evening, Kyle. I just wanted to ask, under the estate duty account, what can you define as farming undertaking?
So yeah, so that would be any farm where there's actually farming happening, farming activities happening, whether it's, you know, animals, livestock, or you know, crops at the end of the day. So if it comes to exam, if they give you a farm on its own means nothing. That's just a normal immovable property. But if they use the word of farming undertaking, or if they say a farm where there's farming activities, or they say something that gives you the idea that there was actually farming activities happening, that would then be a farming undertaking.
Okay, thank you very much.
Cool.
Hello, can I follow up, please?
All right, I heard a
This one-
gentleman, then I heard a lady. That will be the last two questions for now. Go for it, sir.
Yeah, if this farming, it's in the neighboring countries, say Botswana, Lesotho, is it will it still matter when it comes to that what do I call it, to that estate duty?
Yeah, so if it's a farm in another country, then we can't tax it in South Africa, hey? Because it's not like we can bring that asset back. I mean, if that was money in Lesotho, they could just transfer the money back, yeah, and you know, it would be put in our deceased estate bank account and it would be taxable. But a farm can't be transferred to South Africa. So if that farming undertaking was in a foreign country, you would leave it out of your estate duty.
Thank you.
Cool, the lady.
Hi, I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure, again, in reference to this example that you gave, it says that X donated 20,000 to a children's home. Would that then fall under a legatee in the distribution account?
100% correct, but I want you to think a bit further. That is definitely a legatee in the distribution account. But is there not another place that it maybe has a home at?
Yes, no, I already put it into the estate duty account, but I just wanted to know if it features as a legatee in the distribution account as well.
Perfect, it most definitely does.
Thank you so much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do now, you have your 10 pages here for your L&D account. You will also see, and I spoke to you yesterday about this, you'll also see on eLeader, I mentioned, or I gave sort of an activity there, a little sort of question, a L&D type of question. All right, it's a one-page document that's there on eLeader. And I recommended yesterday, you know, if you can print it, please do. It would make life a bit easier, but if not, no problem. What I want to do is I want to go through this example of L&D, and then I'm going to tell you what account it needs to go into. All right, so that you know, practically speaking, because now we know how to draft the L&D, but now you also got to know what account it would go into, where we would use it. So we are going to be making notes about where we would place all of these descriptions in our L&D account. Once we understand from this activity where everything goes, and we've made our notes, plus we now know how to draft the L&D, we should be ready to be able to go and study how to do the L&D come exam time. So what I'm going to do now, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a 5-minute break just to give everyone a chance to make sure they have the question with them as well as their notes with them. All right, I'll be back in 5 minutes, and then we'll chat about this.
Can somebody please advise on the exam? I see there's another exam on the, is it the 11th? Well, are those valid dates for exams, or are we still waiting for that question to be answered?
Okay, hello. I just wanted to comment on the study guide. I noticed from page 224 to the end, it's all examples of documents. I think the first exam is on the 9th and the 14th. There's 2 exams for next month.
Yeah, are those valid dates for the exams, or are they still referring
Yes.
to last semester? Somebody asked the question.
I think those are valid dates. You must also log into eLeader now, and you can check.
Yeah, that's what eLeader
Just
said.
yeah, just open your site and then see your module site and see.
The wet exam is on the 14th of July.
Yeah.
Hi, we also received something today regarding the amendments, and I did notice that the standalone assessments, the date has changed. It's saying 9th of August. It was 1st of October, so I don't know.
Yeah, they brought those forward.
We should confirm with Zakwiswa. If Zakwiswa, if she is online still, can she advise us or inform us?
Hello, guys. Hello, can anyone hear me? What the hell?
Yes, we can
Yeah,
hear
Bob.
you. Are you breaking up?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Let us just kindly be reminded to make sure we are all muted. We should all have that little questionnaire open in front of you. Let's have a look how we would deal with this. In what accounts would we put certain things? All right. Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, I have now shown you how you go about drafting your L&D. Now we are trying to look at how we would interpret a question. So if we have a look on top, it says X is married in community of property to Y. Straight away, I mean, we know that's important, ladies and gentlemen. We know that Y is entitled to half. X dies with a valid will. So we have testate law we are dealing with over here. X leaves his entire estate to his two children, A and B. That is heirs, hey? The two children get the whole estate. X bequeaths 20,000 Rand to a children's fund. Ladies and gentlemen, you can see X is giving something specifically to someone. So that is a legatee. So just from looking at the question on top, we know there's a marriage and community of property. There's a will. We've already identified our heirs being A and B, and we've identified a legatee being the children's fund. Obviously, that is going to play a huge part in our distribution account, because as far as the distribution account goes, whatever balance we have would have to give half to Y because of the marriage and community of property. We then have to give 20,000 Rand to the children's fund because they are a legatee, and whatever is left, we'll have to give to A and B. Right. Yeah, they give us a list of assets and liabilities. Let's go through the assets. So the first one is IRF 123. So ladies and gentlemen, that would be in our liquidation account under immovable property. Would have IRF 123. You can see they didn't give any more of a description over there. So you'd have to make up the description over there, make up a province, a title deed number, make up the size. So IRF 123 would be our first asset in the liquidation account under immovables. Obviously, it's 2 million Rand. Ladies and gentlemen, and IRF is not cash, eh? So we'd have to value it and award it. So it would look quite similar to how we drafted it in our liquidation account that we've been going through, except it wouldn't be IRF 678, it would be IRF 123. We'd have to value it, make up whoever valued it, and then we'd have to award it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, every time we need to award an asset, we're going to award it in the same way. How are we going to award this? First things first, we know marriage is ranked first. So half of that must be awarded to the spouse, to Y, because of the marriage in community of property. Once we have awarded half away, we have a look what the will says. The will says the two children, A and B, must share in what's left because they are the heirs. So we would award half to Y because of the marriage, and the other half will award to A and B because of the will. The will has appointed A and B as the heirs. So every time we award something, we'll do it in that fashion, as per this example. We look at the next one. We have a Mazda vehicle. So we are done with the movable property under assets. We now move on to movables. Now again, you can use your example that we've been working through as a point of reference. We have a Mazda that's 100,000 Rand. So that'll be our second asset under movable property. You'll make up a registration number for me. You'll put the amount of 100,000 Rand down. Obviously, this is a non-cash asset because it's a car, it's not cash. So we'd have to make up who valued it, and we'd have to award it. Again, we'd award half to Y because of the marriage and community of property, and the other half to A and B. The awarded would look the same every single time now. Our third asset is coins. Realized. The question tells you those coins were sold. They were realized for 30,000 Rand. So that would be our third item under movables, would be coins. They do not mention what type of coin it is, so you are welcome to obviously make up what type of coin that is. It'll be realized for the amount of 30,000 Rand. Again, because we sold it, we don't need to value it to award it. We just say realized. The fourth item over here is ABC Company, shareholding approved by Chief Revenue Inspector. Just by reading that, you need to know it is a private company. Now they say the value of the shares is 500,000 Rand, but the shares is sold for 800,000 Rand. Ladies and gentlemen, I said to you already that the moment anything is sold, we always use the sold for price. So our fourth item is the ABC company. Make up a company registration number for me. We've been through the way we describe these things. They've told us the shares are sold, so it is realized, in other words, and the amount we're going to put in our liquidation account is 800,000 Rand. Always use the sold for price in your liquidation account. So we'll use the 800,000 Rand. Okay. The next one, I see a Liberty Investment UT. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we haven't discussed this one before, but if you see a UT number, it means it's a unit trust. So again, this falls under movables. Unit trust falls under movables, under assets. So we would have a unit trust there. And ladies and gentlemen, you can describe it the same way the question tells you. You could say Liberty Investment because it's a unit trust. You say 200 units. I'm just using the description. And obviously they tell you it's worth 10,000 Rand. Ladies and gentlemen, remember one thing. Shares in a company or a unit trust, that is not cash. It hasn't been converted to cash yet. With our ABC company, we said realized because the question told us we sold those shares. Obviously, we sell it for cash. In the unit trust, you can see nowhere does it mention that what we own over there has been sold for cash. So the unit trust, I would award it half to the spouse and the remainder to A and B. Why? Because a unit trust is not cash yet, ladies and gentlemen. You must convert that into cash if you want the cash. You could pass over the unit trust to someone else. It doesn't necessarily have to be cash. So yeah, they haven't told us it's cash, so we award that unit trust. I then see the next one is the bank account. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I know that bank accounts and policies fall under claims in favor, but I am busy with movables at the moment. So what do? I just make sure that I am done with my movables before I close my movables. So the bank account I'm going to leave for now because that's a claim in favor. But I do see after the bank account that there is a comic collection. Ladies and gentlemen, a comic collection is also movables. So that will be my next asset, the comic collection. That will be my sixth item. All right. Now, when you describe a comic collection, I mean, there's no real way there, ladies and gentlemen. You can just literally say comic collection. If you know comics, you can make up the type of comic collection it is. But if you don't know it, then just by saying comic collection, that is good enough. Let's see what it says here. Value at date of death, 50,000 Rand. Realized 60,000. So we know realized is another word for sold. And then commission of 5,000 Rand. Now, ladies and gentlemen, commission of 5,000 Rand is money we have to pay. I know money that we have to pay is not an asset. That's a loss. That's a liability. So I'm going to leave that for now. I'm just focused on the assets for now. It said value at date of death 50K, but realized 60K. Ladies and gentlemen, we go back to the rule we learned. Always use the sold for price. When an asset is sold, always use the sold for price in the liquidation account. So item 6 would be the comic collection under movables, and we will use the 60,000 Rand figure because we always use the sold for price, the realized figure. That then concludes our movables. The next sort of subheading under assets is claims in favor. And I said, yeah, we've got to look out for bank accounts and policies. All right. Now, we skipped a bank account now because we're still dealing with movables. So we'll go back to that FNB savings account. That will be our item 7 under our assets, the FNB savings account. Ladies and gentlemen, they do not give you an account number there, so you know you've got to make one up. That's just part of the description. They give us a balance at date of death of 25,000 Rand. And they say collected 28,000 Rand. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, I would assume in the exam, they would tell you X dies on 5 January and there's 25,000 Rand in the bank account. And then on 10 March, there's 28,000 Rand in the bank account. Okay, then you know 3,000 Rand was accumulated after date of death. But I want us to just think practically about this. If you have 25,000 Rand the day you die, how can you collect 28,000 Rand? It is impossible. That money must have been left in the bank account and must have accrued interest. I've said to you probably at least 20 times already that when you speak of bank account money, money that is in a bank account, in the liquidation account, always use what you have as per date of death. If it became more or less after date of death, the amount it became more or less we'll use in our income and expenditure account. So in our liquidation account, the figure we're going to use is the date of death figure, right? The 25,000 Rand. That 3,000 Rand that accumulated thereafter, we'll use in the income and expenditure. So we use the 25,000 Rand in our liquidation account. All right. I don't see any other bank accounts here. So that was item 7. The next asset I see is the Sanlam Life policy. That was 550,000 Rand payable to Y. Who is Y? Y is our spouse. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, here's a life policy. And you can see there's a beneficiary. It says it's payable to Y. So Y is the beneficiary. What did we learn? If there's a life policy with a beneficiary, do not touch it in our liquidation account. So we are going to leave that one alone for now. It doesn't have a home in our liquidation account because it has a beneficiary. Look at the next one. Momentum life policy over the life of Y. Okay, now ladies and gentlemen, without reading any further, a life policy over the life of Y. Straight away we're thinking, okay, this is not a life policy over the deceased life. This is a life policy over someone else's life. So why are they talking about it here? Obviously, we were the beneficiary, right? And I said, when you see something like that, always look out for the surrender value. And there it gives you. Surrender value of 600,000 Rand. And then it speaks of 10,000 Rand unpaid premiums. Ladies and gentlemen, that 10,000 Rand is an unpaid premium. That's a liability. So I do not touch that for now. Nevertheless, our 8th item under claims in favor is the momentum policy. We said when we see a surrender value, we put the surrender value in our liquidation account. So we'll put the 600,000 Rand there by the momentum life policy in our liquidation account. That was item 8. And then our very last one is a Liberty life policy of 200,000 Rand. Ladies and gentlemen, it goes without saying, the bank accounts and the policies is all collected in our liquidation account. And then lastly, item 9, the Liberty life policy, there was no beneficiary. We learned if there's no beneficiary, it gets paid into the deceased estate. So that Liberty life policy will be item 9 in our liquidation account for 200,000 Rand because there's no beneficiary. So we include it. Ladies and gentlemen, you will obviously add your total assets up. We are done with the assets. From there, we need to minus our liabilities. Now you can see, ladies and gentlemen, over here, they give you the administration expenses. They tell you it's 400,000 Rand. So I mentioned to you that that could happen in an exam. They could just give it to you. So yeah, they've given it to you, 400,000 Rand. Ladies and gentlemen, they haven't asked us to do anything else here. They haven't asked us to calculate executors' fees. They've just said your administration expenses is 400,000 Rand, finished and done. Meaning, we've got to assume that all the administration expenses has been accounted for and it added up to 400,000 Rand, right? Now, keep in mind, you might find liabilities in your assets. I mean, when we were going through our assets now we found 2 liabilities. We found the commission and we found the unpaid premiums. Now, if you recall, ladies and gentlemen, I spoke to you about admin expenses. And I said to you, any commission that you have to pay someone for selling an asset, that is done in the process of winding up the deceased estate. It is therefore an administration expense under liabilities. So we had that 5,000 Rand commission for selling the comic collection. But we know that commission falls under admin expenses. So ladies and gentlemen, they've told us our admin expenses is 400,000 Rand. So obviously it has already accounted for that commission. If we were to add 5,000 Rand admin expenses to that 5,000 Rand commission to our admin expenses, it is now going to change our admin expenses. So we can't do that. We need to make the assumption over here that it has already been accounted for because commission is an admin expense and they've told us our admin expenses is 400,000 Rand in total. They haven't asked us to break it down, so we can simply just say admin expenses 400,000 Rand. Done. That is your admin expenses. The next sort of subheading under liabilities is creditors. So let's have a look here. We have the FNB bond account. So we obviously got to list them as a liability. FNB bond account, 420,000 Rand. That's a liability. We owe Vodacom 2,000 Rand. That's another liability we must list. The third one is the Standard Bank credit card. At date of death, we owed 20,000 Rand. Then it goes on to say, bank charges accrued thereafter in the amount of 400 Rand. Ladies and gentlemen, they are telling you bank charges accrued thereafter in the amount of 400 Rand. That's a loss of 400 Rand. We know that's expenditure under the income and expenditure account because it is money lost after date of death. But for now, we are only worried about our date of death figure. Therefore, that 20,000 Rand that we owe on the Standard Bank credit card, we will list as a liability under creditors. When you are done with your liabilities, always go back to your assets and see if there's no other liabilities over there. We did see there was a momentum policy, and we saw there's 10,000 Rand unpaid premiums. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a loss. That is a liability. So we are going to add that unpaid premiums for the momentum policy, that 10,000 Rand, to our creditors under liabilities. So that 10,000 Rand of unpaid premiums is for the momentum policy is also a creditor under our liabilities. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll add all of that up and you will have your total assets. Now we know, your total liabilities. Now we have our total assets. We've done our liabilities. We have our total liabilities. But from there, we need to minus estate duty. So let's have a look what in this example is going to affect our estate duty. Now we know the formula for estate duty. Ladies and gentlemen, if you think you're going to get confused, please remember to open your notes. On estate duty, we dealt with it on page 6 of our notes. Now, we know that starts off with property. And it starts off, we have to calculate what is property. We know property is our total assets. So obviously, you'll just go and put your total assets from your liquidation account down. We said from there are potentially two things we can minus. One is 30% of a farming undertaking. Well, in this question, there was no farming undertaking, so we can't do anything there. The other is the difference in private company shares. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we did have a private company. It was that ABC company. And if you recall over there, we made two notes. We said this is only for a private company, and this is only when shares are sold for more, specifically more than what they are valued at. The difference between what they're valued at and what they were sold for more that, we can minus. So we had shares valued at 500,000 Rand, but sold for 800,000 Rand. Right? So that 800,000 Rand formed part of our liquidation account. But SARS is saying, hold on. The difference between what they're valued at and what they were sold for, we don't want to tax you on. So the difference between 500 and 800,000 Rand is 300,000 Rand. So we can minus that 300,000 Rand from our total assets. And that would be our property over here. Total assets minus that 300,000 Rand in the private company shares. Obviously, that will give you a property answer. Done and dusted. So I said, look out for that in the exam, please, ladies and gentlemen. If we look at our estate duty calculation, the next thing we must do is we must plus deemed property. Now, I don't see any donations here, and I don't see any accrual here. The other type of deemed property I said to look out for is any life policies with a named beneficiary. Now we've got to have a look. Did we have any life policy with a named beneficiary? Yes, we had that Sanlam life policy, the 550,000 Rand that was payable to Y. Y is a named beneficiary, obviously. So under deemed property, we can add that Sanlam life policy of 550,000 Rand. That will fall under deemed property. That is the only deemed property that I can see over here. All right, that will be your deemed property done and dusted. The next step is where we now need to minus our allowable deductions. Let's have a look if we see any allowable deductions here. Well, obviously there's going to be, ladies and gentlemen, because the first allowable deduction I said to look out for is liabilities. So you're now going to minus your total liabilities. That's the liabilities you got from your liquidation account. Right, the next thing I said to look out for is there any charitable bequests? Because we can minus that under allowable deductions as well. And if you look on top of your question, you can see we've given 20,000 Rand to a children's fund. Now that children's fund will be a charitable bequest. So that 20,000 Rand we can minus under allowable deductions as well, because that is a charitable bequest. There was no accrual to look out for. The other thing I mentioned importantly is we can minus any life policies where the named beneficiary happens to be our surviving spouse. Now, we had a life policy of 550,000 Rand that was payable to Y. And I said we put that under deemed property because, you know, that's always a deemed property where there's a named beneficiary. However, Y happens to be our surviving spouse because X was married in community of property to Y. So because that named beneficiary happens to be our surviving spouse, we said we can minus that 550,000 Rand again now under allowable deductions. Remember the rule? If that named beneficiary was your surviving spouse, we are not going to tax you on it. In other words, we plus it by deemed property and we minus it by allowable deductions. If that named beneficiary was not Y, it was someone else, let's say it was A or B, we would have only plus under deemed property. We would not have been allowed to minus it under allowable deductions. Okay, so that 550,000 Rand from the Sanlam policy was plus by deemed property, and we got to minus it by allowable deductions because the beneficiary was our spouse. Ladies and gentlemen, obviously the other allowable deduction here would be your spouse's half share, hey? Because you were married in community of property, and we said where there's a marriage in community of property, you should not be taxed on your spouse's half share. So that would be the other allowable deduction that I see over here. I don't see any other allowable deductions than that. So we can go on with our sum. What was the next step? The next step, we had one more thing to minus. It was the section 4A primary rebate. So we'll minus the 3.5 million over there as well. So now your sum reads property plus deemed property minus allowable deductions minus your rebate of 3.5 million. That is then going to give you a dutiable amount. It's going to give you an answer, which we call a dutiable amount. Now, I think in this scenario, in this specific question, you're going to get a negative answer. But if you get a negative answer, I told you to still write nil, and you're still going to finish your sum. 20% of nil equals a state duty, which is going to be nil again. Right. Just a heads up. From looking at this and doing my quick maths, I can see we're definitely going to get a negative answer. So yeah. So we'll get a nil, and 20% of nil equals a state duty, which is nil. All right. Now remember, you would take that figure to your liquidation account and put it there by a state duty in your liquidation account. Then you would go assets minus liabilities minus estate duty equals balance available for distribution. Ladies and gentlemen, you will then take that balance available for distribution and bring it forward into your distribution account. Look at page 8 of your notes. Balance available for distribution brought forward. That is the balance available for distribution from our liquidation account. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll have to now disperse this balance. Give it away in order of ranking. Marriage, legatees, and heirs. So if we look at our question over here, was there a marriage? Yes, there was a marriage to Y. What type of marriage was it? It was in community of property. So we'd give half of that balance to Y because of the marriage in community of property. Once we are done giving half away, Whatever is left, we must give to legatees and heirs. We said legatees are next in line. We had one legatee, that children's fund of 20,000 Rand. So we'll list the children's fund as a legatee and give 20,000 Rand to it. Whatever is left there must be distributed amongst your heirs. We said we have two heirs in this question, A and B. So A and B will share in what's left. So your distribution account would have been first to give half to Y because there was a marriage and community of property, then to go and give 20,000 Rand to the children's fund because there was a legatee, and then whatever is left, you will go divide equally amongst your heirs, being A and B. Right, after that, you'll have to have a look at your next account. Your next account will be the recapitulation account. We see on page 9. Now we have to go and have a look. We start that recapitulation account off by saying cash assets and assets reduced to cash. We said that is everything that we realize or collect from the liquidation account. In other words, that is all the assets that is cash, not the things that were awarded. So in our liquidation account, we had 9 assets, 9 items. So you're going to go back to your liquidation account now and see which of those 9 assets were either realized or collected. Item 1 was the movable property that was awarded. Item 2 was the Mazda that was awarded. Item 3, that was the coins, and that was realized. Okay, so that's cash. So the first cash item was item 3 for 30,000 Rand. Item 4 was the private company, ABC. We sold it for 800,000 Rand. We realized it, because if you sell it, it means realized. It's cash. So item 4, that 800,000 Rand is also cash that we have. Item 5 was the unit trust. We said that was not cash because it did not say that we sold that for cash. And item 6 was the comic collection. We realized that for 60,000 Rand. So far, item 3, item 4, and item 6 is cash. So we're going to put those figures down there in our recapitulation account in the first column where I show those X's. Item 7 was the F&B account. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that was collected, hey? The 25,000 Rand. So item 7 was also cash because we collected it. So we put the 25,000 Rand down there as well. Item 8 and item 9, those were our policies. We had the 600,000 Rand momentum policy, and we had the 200,000 Rand Liberty Life policy, which we listed in our liquidation account. Both of those were collected as well. I told you, collect money in the bank and collect policies that pay out. Therefore, item 3, item 4, item 6, 7, 8, and 9. That was the items from our assets that were cash. Item 1, 2, and 5 was awarded. If item 1, 2, and 5 was awarded, that means it's non-cash. So 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9 were all cash. All right, because that was realized or collected. So we list those items there in our recapitulation account. We add it all up, and you can see the arrow I draw to the far right. Once you've added that all up, you put your total figure on the top right-hand corner there. That resembles all the assets that is cash in your deceased estate. In other words, it resembles how much cash you have in your deceased estate. Now we've got to calculate if it's enough. And I said there's always 3 aspects that we minus from there. Liabilities, estate duty, and any cash legatees. Those are 3 things that has to be paid in cash. So we go to our liabilities. You take your liabilities, whatever your total liabilities were from your liquidation account, you put it down over there. So that is your liabilities from your liquidation account. Calculation wise, I told you it's going to be nil in this example. So we'll put down nil over there. And then lastly, 2 cash legatees. Did we have any cash legatees? We did. We said 20,000 Rand must go to a children's fund. So that 20,000 Rand must be given in cash then, obviously. So we've got to minus that 20,000 Rand as well. So your cash assets and assets reduced to cash, that total figure we got from items 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, that total figure we minus our total liabilities, our estate duty, and our 20,000 Rand to go to the children's fund, our cash legatee from there. And we are either going to get a cash surplus if it's a positive answer, or a cash shortfall if it is a negative answer. And then we go on to our final account, ladies and gentlemen, income and expenditure account. That was on page 10. So let's have a look through our question over here if we find any income after date of death. Our FNB savings account, ladies and gentlemen, we said look out for money that becomes more money. We said in our liquidation account, we put the 25,000 Rand, the balance at date of death, right? But we collected 3,000 Rand. Therefore, 3,000 Rand was made after date of death. They don't tell us how it was made. So we've got to just assume how it was made. Now, the safe assumption will be interest. Interest accumulated. That's how 25 became 28. All right. So that FNB savings account we'll have to put down in our income and expenditure account, right? Pretty much exactly the same as the example as per page 10. I would just add the account number there, to be totally honest, and we can make the assumption of interest, and we'll put the 3,000 Rand that accumulated after date of death. We'll put that 3,000 Rand there where I show the X. I do not see any other income from this question A. There was no other income made after date of death. So your total income would have been that 3,000 Rand. I'll move on to expenditure. Okay, straight away, because we have income, we at least have one expense. It'll be the executor's remuneration, 6% of total income. Now, 6% of 3,000 Rand, I believe, is 180 Rand. Okay, so our fee will be 180 Rand, our executor's remuneration, 6% of the total income, 180 bucks. Was there any other expenditure after date of death? Right at the bottom, the Standard Bank credit card. You'll see it said there was bank charges that accrued thereafter in the amount of 400 Rand. So they're telling you after date of death, there was a loss of 400 Rand through bank charges. And obviously, we said money that becomes less after date of death is expenditure. So our Standard Bank credit card, the bank charges of 400 Rand will have to be also listed as an expenditure. So our expenditure was the 180 executors remuneration and the 400 Rand bank charges. I don't see anything else. Ladies and gentlemen, you know the drill now. Take your 3,000 Rand total income and minus your expenditure, minus the 180 bucks executors remuneration, minus the 400 Rand bank charges, and that will give you your balance available for distribution. You will now need to go and distribute that balance, right? How would you distribute it? Same ranking, marriage, give half to Y, because Y is a spouse married in community of property. Next in line is legatees, but if you recall, we sorted our legatee out in our distribution accounts already. We already gave 20,000 Rand to that legatee, so we can't give the legatee more. So we'll skip the legatees and we'll go to the heirs, A and B. A and B will then share in what is left so that there resembles a nil balance. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, what I want you to get from this is if you look at those 10 pages that we've been going through the last two lectures, and if you learn how to draft the L&D, you see by just knowing how to draft it, how many free marks there is here. It's not too difficult to put those valuations down into your L&D. It's easy. Now and then they try to confuse you, maybe with your bank accounts, maybe with your policies. They might try and trick you, but I've given you tips on what to look out for. But we simply go and put those figures down as per pages 1 to 10. right? We go and allocate the figures wherever I drew the X, right? That is where the figures would be allocated. Should we study the L&D, it would be very difficult to fail it once we know how to draft the L&D, because putting the figures down is easy. But obviously studying more in depth would be the difference between simply just passing it and then getting a distinction at the end of the day. So I hope that opens our eyes up a bit as to how we go about drafting the L&D account. We now have the example. We also have this sort of question that they've given us, and we've now illustrated, and I hope we've all made our notes where what goes. And that is how we'll go about drafting our L&D account come exam time. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure there's a couple people who maybe missed something or doesn't understand something properly. So let me open the floor up to questions.
Hi, good evening, Kai.
Mr. Kai,
Good evening,
just
Kai.
a
If I
quick
can-
one. My network was off by the time you started. Can you please start just from the beginning, just up until 4.4?
Sorry, sir. You were the second gentleman that said hello. So I'll hear your question next. Well, first hear the other gentleman, then we'll listen to your question.
Yes, I was
Alright.
saying
No, but can I thought that
I
was
was
me.
saying that the network was off by the time you started. May you please start just from the beginning up until 0.4? That will be fine.
If I may
When you say
ask-
4, are you talking about the fourth asset?
Yeah, the fourth asset, ABC company.
Yeah. But what account are you in?
Just on the liquidation and distribution account. Just where you started. Just where you started with the first one, ex-merit in COP. Just there, and then explain up until 2.4.
Okay, I'll quickly do that, sir. But just please keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that these lectures, they will be available for you to go through. So if you did miss something, you can go and check what you missed. But just to quickly assist you there, we saw that the X leaves entire estate to his 2 children, A and B. Those are the heirs. And then the children's fund, X bequeaths 20,000 to the children's fund. That was a legatee. Okay. Then we looked at our 4 assets. We had IRF 123 of 2 million. We said that is an asset under immovables in our liquidation account. We'll have to say IRF 123 over there, and then we'll have to describe it. They don't give us the description, so we'll have to make it up. Right? But that IRF 123 was the only immovable property under our assets. Then we went on to movables. The Mazda vehicle for 100,000 Rand was our first movable asset. That was item 2, the Mazda vehicle for 100,000 Rand. Just to also make note, you can see that IRF 123 and that Mazda vehicle is not cash, right? It's a house that's there and it's a car that's there. So we had to award those 2 assets. How do we award it? You look at your question on top. You can see there was a marriage in community of property. So half must go to Y because of the marriage. The remaining half gets shared between the heirs. And the heirs, we said, is A and B. The third asset we saw there was coins. Coins was realized. They tell us that we sold the coins because realized means sold. So that was our third asset, and that was 30,000 Rand. And our fourth asset in the immovables, or our fourth item asset, was the private company, ABC Company. Now, they gave us a value of our shares of 500,000 Rand, but they told us the shares were sold for 800,000 Rand. And remember the tips on page 1 of your notes? When they have an asset and they say it's valued at X amount, but sold for X amount, always use the sold for figure. So by ABC Company in our liquidation account, we would have put down 800,000 Rand. Always the sold for figure. I hope that assists you, sir. All right, the other gentleman.
Yeah, so if I may ask my question, actually. Hi, good evening. Sorry, it's a quick one. Under the the liquidation account, the point where that says anything that goes to the surviving spouse. I just want to check with you in terms of our example. the items that would go under that particular column or under that column. Am I correct to say it's these items that are awarded, in this case being the F123 and the Mazda vehicle?
Sorry, so are you referring to the distribution account?
Yeah. No, sorry, the liquidation. Where am I now?
I just need to clarify what account you're referring to over there, just so that I can answer you properly.
Page 7. So it will be page 7 and the example.
Okay, page 7. That was the distribution account.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, the estate duty account. Sorry.
Estate duty.
Yeah.
Yes. So the spouse's share in that, most definitely.
All right, thanks.
You would have. I hope that answers you.
No, I just wanted to check. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Perfect.
Hi, sorry. Kyle.
Hi, Kyle.
All right. I heard a gentleman, then I heard two ladies. So let's go in that order.
Kyle, on the liquidation account, where there is the Mazda vehicle awarded, half goes to the wife, half goes to the heir. That amount, should it be split or should it just be one amount in the liquidation account as 100,000?
It will just be one amount as 100,000 rand.
Okay, but on your description, you need to say half wife, half heir.
Yes, by the description, yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, the two ladies.
Okay. Kyle, I just wanted to get a follow-up on FNB savings account. So balance at date of death. So on the recapitulation account, we record the 25,000. And then when we move on to the income and expenditure account, under the income as interest, we just say 28,000 minus 25,000 and we record the 3,000.
That is 100% correct.
Okay, no, I'm sorted now. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear you understand.
Kyle?
Lady?
Yeah.
A question with regards to that estate duty account where it says anything that goes to the surviving spouse. Is that basically where you take the total assets in the liquidation account and you basically just divide that by 2, or where do you get that amount from? Hello?
Sorry, I was muted there. My apologies. So technically, that is assets minus liabilities, right? That is, I mean, your assets minus your liabilities equals your net worth in reality. Half of that is yours and the other half is your spouse's. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So what the formula you can use there is property minus liabilities. You can jot that down. Property minus liabilities. Half of that figure is what you'll put there. So where do we see the term property? We see that under estate duty on top, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so whatever your figure is there, minus your liabilities that you get from your liquidation account, from that figure, divide by 2, and that is your spouse's half share.
Okay, cool.
For
So
tax
you don't
purposes.
add, okay, so for the estate duty account, you don't add property plus a deemed property and then minus liabilities. You just take the property. Let's say there was the farming undertaking and the difference in company shares. Do you still subtract that and then that total is your property? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, 100% correct. Because remember, this is not truly our spouse's half share. This is for what SARS regards spouse's half share. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so just for the final clarification here, so it's just property minus liabilities, not property plus deemed property minus liabilities.
Just property minus liabilities, half of that figure there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, fine.
100%. Okay, next. Do we have any other questions, ladies and gentlemen?
Yes, Kyle.
Hi,
I just
hi.
want to find out if you do have the answers for this sum, so that like maybe a model answer, so that we can try and calculate at our own time.
I don't have the model answer with me at the moment, but I'm not too sure if I'm allowed to share such a thing.
Oh.
But what we can do is I can find out by Zukiswa, and if we're allowed to, then I'll gladly forward that to all of you guys. But yeah, I'll first need to get clarity on that before I do that.
Okay, thank you.
Hi,
Cool.
Kyle.
All right, the other lady. Yes, ma'am.
On comic collection, value at date of death, 50,000. Can you explain where we record that one? I'm a bit confused.
So we don't record that at all. Remember the rule. If you go to page 1 of your 10-page notes, it says when there's an asset and they say the asset has been sold, always use the sold for price. In other words, the realized price. So if you look at that question, it says your asset, your comic collection is worth 50,000 Rand. But it says that we sell it, we realize it for 60,000 Rand. So the rule says always use the sold for price. So you won't worry about the 50K and you'll just use the 60,000 Rand in the liquidation account. Cool.
Okay, so we don't record it anyway, the 50,000, it's out.
No, it's irrelevant. You know, if you wanted to, in your description of the asset, you could say valued at 50K if you wanted to, but I'm just going to give you an extra mark, you know, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
As long as you have the 60,000 Rand recorded by your asset column, then you're good.
Okay, no, thank you, I understand.
Hi, Kyle.
Cool. The other lady? Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to understand in terms of the admin expenses. In this scenario, they've given us the full amount and we assume that it includes everything. When it's not, how do we lay out, do we put it as an amount as they have it there as a total amount? Do we calculate it separately and then add it on there as like a total amount as they have it, or do we break it down?
Yeah, so let's go to it in our notes. Where was that? That was page 5. Okay, so you'll see admin expenses there. I don't know, do you have page 5 open in front of you?
Yes.
Okay, you'll see by admin expenses, I put an X next to it in the liability column, the negative column. So that's where you would have put the 400,000 Rand, right? But the question didn't want you to do anything further. But maybe they would have asked you, okay, just make up, show us how you got to 400,000 Rand, make it up. Then you'll see underneath it, you could have listed all those different types of admin expenses, from bank charges all the way down to commission costs, right? You would have placed that figure in your first column, the calculation column. Remember, if there's 3 columns, the first one is always the calculation column. Then you could have placed figures there, just so that it adds up to 400,000 Rand. But you know, sometimes they could tell you your admin expenses is 400K, but add on your executors' fees and other things as well. So you've just got to really read the question carefully to see what they want you to exactly do over there.
But what goes into the third column will be the total amount.
No, your third column is for assets. Remember, admin expenses is one of the liabilities. So that goes in your negative column. The total amount, you'll see where I put the X. That's your negative column. Yes.
So what I mean is
400,000 would have.
The 400 would go in that column where you put the X.
Correct.
Thank you.
Hi, Kyle. Hi, Kyle. Hi,
yes,
Kyle.
I just wanted to follow up on the question that the lady asked. Would under comic collections, would that commission fee go under admin expenses as commission costs?
Yes,
Since
100%
it doesn't
correct.
describe. Okay. Thank you.
Hi,
Perfect.
Carl.
Other lady? Yes,
Um,
ma'am.
Kyle, I wanted to know, in the same like the comic collection, why isn't it added income account? The difference between the realized value and then the value at so
Can you please start over? I lost you there for a moment. Sorry. Go for it again.
my question is in relation to the comic collection. I wanted to know why the realized amount, the difference between the realized amount and then the value at date of death. Why is it that we don't add the difference to the income and expenditure account? And then my second question is in relation to the allowable deduction for the spouse married in community of property. How do you arrive to at the half? Which figure are we dividing to get the half that's supposed to go to the spouse, the surviving spouse?
Okay, so regarding your first question, remember the rule that we see on page 1. Where there's an asset, you always use the sold for figure. The reason why that's not income and expenditure is because they say you had that asset the day you died. Only money that turns into more money or less money is for income and expenditure. When they tell you have an asset valued at 50K but sold for 60K, that is not money that turned into more money. That's just an asset that was sold for more. So you always use the sold for price in your liquidation account. That's why we don't worry about that 50K. It is not that difference between 50 and 60 is not for income and expenditure because it was an asset that was sold. That's important to remember. And then the allowable deductions, and another lady asked that now, estate duty, how do you calculate your spouse's half share? And I gave the calculation. I said it's property minus liabilities. That will give you an answer, and divide that by 2. Where do you get your property from? You get it from your estate duty account on top of, you look on page 6, your property. Total asset minus potentially a farming undertaking, the difference in private company shares. That gives you a property figure. So that figure over there, minus your total liability, liquidation account, is going to give you an answer. Divide that, and then you have your. Does that assist you, ma'am?
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Pleasure.
Hello?
Yes, sir, I'm listening.
Okay, the admin expenses, as you explained, is it fine to do it under the calculations first? The calculations column for each expense?
Yes. And then you put your total in the liability column.
Hi, Carl.
If I may ask, sorry, I've been skipped quite a number of times. Where does the 10K unpaid premiums go to?
That would be a liability under creditors. So if you look on page 5 of your notes, you'll see creditors, and you'll see there I have Vodacom, Edgar, Swana Municipality, etc. So it'll go somewhere there. That is where your unpaid premiums would go as a creditor.
Noted, thank you.
Hi, Carl.
Yes,
I just want to ask with regards to the income and expenditure account. So here, when it comes to the balance available for distribution, how does the distribution takes place in the circumstances where the marriage is out of community of property? Like, does the rules of interstate succession takes place where there is no will? Does the 250 amount that must be awarded to the spouse first, is it applicable in the circumstances where we are dealing with the income and expenditure account? Do we award as such when we're awarding in the interstate?
Yeah, okay, good question. So 2 things there. First things first, if the marriage is out of community of property, or if the person's single, then there's nothing to give to the spouse. Then you would skip that step. You don't worry. It's not to say that you have to give something to the spouse. You're only giving something to the spouse if there's a marriage and community of property. If there's no marriage in COP, then leave it. Regarding the 250 rule, remember in your distribution account, you would have applied that 250,000 Rand rule with your heirs if there was a spouse and children. If there was a spouse and children in your distribution account, you would have given them each an equal share, or if the equal share was less than 250, you would have given the spouse the 250K. So when it comes to the income and expenditure account, you do not have to apply that rule again because you have already applied it in your distribution account. So you won't apply it again over here. Does that make sense?
Oh, all right. No, thanks. It makes sense.
Perfect. Any more questions, ladies and gents?
Hi, Kyle.
Mr. Carl?
Yes, I heard a lady, then I heard a gentleman. Let's go in that order.
Okay, I just want to find out, can we go back to page 7, where it comes back to anything that goes to surviving spouse as a result of deceased death? Those figures, are you saying it's property that's on page 6? And the liabilities, that's on page 6, those figures.
That's 100% correct. But those liabilities you would have taken from your liquidation account.
Okay, but that's the same figure that gets carried over here in the state duty.
100% correct.
Okay, so the property figure would be the one that you would, it's less your 30% farming and less difference in private company shares and that figure there, am I right?
Correct.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Mr. Carl?
Yes, sir.
If I may ask, as you spoke about the bank charges and the administration costs, they've already been calculated for us in this example. So what about these bank charges that are for the credit? Is it the credit account? Yeah, the Standard Bank account, those bank charges, do we include them in the L&D account and also include them again in our, let me just check here.
I follow your question, so I've got you. I know what you're actually asking. So let me answer you, and if it's not the answer you're looking for, you tell me. Okay.
All right.
So the bank charges that you see on page 5 under admin expenses, that is the bank charges from, remember step 2 when we had to open the deceased estate bank account. That is the bank charges for that deceased estate bank account. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So if you go down to page 10 then, and you look at your income and expenditure account.
Yes.
And you look at expenditure. And in the example we looked at, we had that Standard Bank 400 Rand bank charges. Okay.
Yes.
That was not for the deceased estate bank account. That was the bank account that the deceased had when they passed away. It was just closed down a couple months after they passed away. So that specific bank account of that deceased person accumulated bank charges. That's why it's an expenditure. It is not the bank account that we open when we open a deceased estate bank account. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
That was your question. Okay, the other person?
Mr. Carr?
Yes.
Yes, my question is on the formula for estate duty. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm listening.
All right, so I was saying my question is on the formula for estate duty. So obviously you say property plus deemed property. So my question is on the first property. So you would put on the property, you would put half of the property because of the spouse's share for the marriage and community of property.
No, you would put the full value of everything all the time. Yes.
Okay, and then minus it again in the section 4 allowable deductions.
Here we go. That's where you minus the spouse's half share.
Oh, okay. No, I got it. All right, thank you.
Good stuff.
Hi, Kai.
Yes, I'm listening,
Hi,
sir.
Yes, for confirmation's sake, on page 6, where we find less section allowable deduction, this liability, is it the total liability that we get from page 5 before estate duty?
100% correct, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect.
Hi, Kyle.
Hi, ma'am.
Okay, my question is under claims in favor, the liquidation account for the F&B. Do we use the 25,000 as per the date of death or collected 28,000? Because in your example, it says collected. So I don't know if you use the 25,000 or the 28,000.
You use the 25,000. So with bank accounts, you always use the date of death figure.
The date of death. Okay.
Yes,
Thank
just for
you.
bank accounts, eh?
Mhm. Just for the bank account. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Thanks. Okay, bye.
Perfect.
Mr. Kidsman?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I have a question regarding Credit Life. I see we didn't touch or mention anything about that. Say, for instance, the deceased had a credit card, but that credit card actually had Credit Life, like insurance compulsory on it. So in the event that maybe it's a Discovery credit card and it gets circled by the Credit Life, how do we treat it in the L&D account? How do we go about that?
In such a scenario, remember the rule of full disclosure. So what you would do there is you would still have to list that liability in your liabilities in the liquidation account. But keep in mind that it's going to be settled. So that settlement that's going to be paying into coverage would list as a claim in favor in our assets. You know, so it balances each other out at the end of the day. We don't just, in other words, we don't just ignore it. We still show the loss and the gain.
Okay, so the insurance policy will be listed as a claim in favor.
Correct.
Okay, thank you so much.
Stuff.
Mr. Kicksman, just a question on, for example, if there's a car which is not, it's still owing to the bank, and maybe maybe the spouse takes it over. How would we reflect it in a scenario like this? Not paying a donation because it means that it will stay in the estate, but applies for finance and refinances the car.
Okay, so yeah, if the spouse takes it over, it doesn't change the fact that it was still an asset we had the day we died. So it's still listed as an asset, but we'd award it to the spouse then, because the spouse has now assumed ownership over the vehicle. The amount owing on that vehicle, we won't list as a liability because the spouse would have taken it over, you know, as such, and assumed the liability, or assumed the loss on it. So we'd just have an asset then, we wouldn't have a loss.
Mr. Kidsman.
Hello, can I go on?
Yeah, I heard two gentlemen and then I heard a lady, so we can go in that order.
If I may go.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir.
Hello. Hello. I'll go on.
Question, sir.
Yeah. What happens if
a quick question? Someone
policy...
asked about property being valued.
So guys, just listen to me. Just let's keep the order. We had a gentleman going now, and then we'll hear you next. Then we'll hear the lady. So let's just keep the order. You'll all get a chance.
All right. I'll start. What happens to the insurance policy that has been nominated to the beneficiary, and that particular policy it's ceded to the bank?
So if a policy is ceded to the bank, remember it's still your asset, because it's only ceded to the bank to cover a liability of yours should you not be able to pay it. So any life policies that has the bank that has been ceded to is still an asset in your liquidation account. The reason being is because that beneficiary is actually your liability. It's there to cover that. So you'll still include it.
Oh,
Thank you.
Cool. Other gentlemen?
Mr. Kitzman, if
Okay.
you could just briefly
I just wanted
explain
to
again.
mention there in the comments, the meeting chat message, someone asked about property being valued. Property being valued. Property being valued and whether it should be revalued. So I made a comment that it can be revalued and they must pay commission fee for the revaluation. Is that correct?
Yeah, property can be revalued, and that's obviously important if the estate is taking a long time to wind up, because that's going to obviously impact the value of it. So yeah, it can be revalued, and then obviously the costs for that valuation cost will be an admin expense under your liabilities. All right, there was a lady and then there was a gentleman. Is here the lady?
Hi, Kyle.
Yes.
Okay, my question is the investment, Liberty investment for the 10,000. It says here in the question that it's not sold. Okay, and under claims in favor, it says it only goes there if it's sold or if it's cash. So in this case, where does this investment go to? Under what?
Yeah, so it was a UT, it was a unit trust. So the moment you see UT, it's a unit trust and it goes under movables in your assets.
Under movables, okay.
Yes.
Hi, Kyle.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Hi, Kyle. Yes. For clarity's sake, what happens if one come across a question whereby they state that there is a sum of 50,000 in the account of the deceased wife or the surviving spouse? Do we consider such 50,000 when we do the L&D account, or we look away from that?
If you were married in community of property, then you will have to consider it because you have one estate. But if there's no marriage in COP, then you will leave it alone.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Then the lady.
Hi, Kyle.
Yes.
I've got a question in terms of Section 2B and that application in terms of a valid will. Regarding a question that I read in one of the past papers. So the question reads, Brian executed a will in January 2018 and he left his entire estate to his wife, Pretty, okay? They were married out of community of property. It doesn't stipulate with the accrual, so I'm assuming without the accrual. They were divorced in May 2019. Brian married a new wife in June 2019 and died childless July 2019. So then 2B becomes applicable. The answer, which I completely agree with, says 2B is applicable. Pretty is considered to have died before the dissolution of the marriage, and she can't benefit. What bugs me and confuses me, it then says the estate then devolves according to the law of interstate succession. Therefore, Maria, the new spouse, will be the sole beneficiary. I understand everything except the interstate succession part. When and why does that come into play if there has been a valid will?
Okay, it's really difficult for me when I don't have the question in front of me. But what I can gather is that he remarried.
Yes.
And that obviously changes the scope of things.
Yeah.
The moment you marry, because the assumption is then on that current spouse instead of your previous spouse. And I think the fact that he remarried, it meant then that he couldn't apply because he remarried. If he didn't remarry, then he would have had to apply. Because he remarried, then it falls away, and then that will can't be read anymore. And it's as if he died without a will. And that's why the intestate kicked in.
Okay, I understand.
And maybe Mr. Kicksman, yesterday you mentioned that, I think it was the first day, you mentioned that a person is given 3 months to update their will. So, listening to the dates, I think it was still within 3 months. So that's why they considered the interstate.
Yeah, but if it was within 3 months, they would have just, yeah, I hear you. But there was a remarriage there, and I think that had an impact on it. But yeah, I'll need to see that question in front of me. It's very difficult to listen to a question and just have the answer. I'll need to read it,
Perfect. I've asked Zakiswa to email it through to you because I just put my thoughts out. Like I said, I agree with everything. I just don't know why interstate succession would apply. Because the Section 2B is applicable. Everything happened within the 3-month period. So is it because there weren't any other beneficiaries? Yeah, I'm just not sure.
It must be. That's the only thing I can think of as well, because that's why it was as though there was no will then. That's what went interstate. But let me, send the question through. Let me have a look at it.
Fantastic. I appreciate it. Thank you.
No worries.
Hi, Kyle.
Hi, ma'am.
I just want to go back to the example you gave us for the unit trust. Do we have to say who valued it for the valuation in terms of description?
Not with the unit trust. You can, after you've described it, you can just award it. Sort of like an exception.
All right. And also, I'd like to ask, how does it work in terms of like, when we write the exam, because it's going to be online, are we going to draft everything on the laptop? I'm just trying to make sense of how it's actually going to work.
To be honest with you, I'm not sure. I'm trying to think now. Normally, you got to draft your own lines. So I'm not too sure if it's one of those scenarios where you can do it like in pen and then scan it and send it through. But if you do it on your PC straight from the beginning, I think you'll have to draft your columns. I don't think they will give you the columns.
Oh, so there is another option to actually scan an email.
Yeah, you can just clarify with Zukiswa on that. As far as I know, that's the case. But yeah, I'd feel better if you just confirmed with her.
Okay, thank you, Carl.
Cool. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll do 2 more questions. Who do we have?
Mr. Kitzman.
Sir, I'm listening.
Could you please repeat for me on the estate duty account, anything that goes to surviving spouse as a result of deceased death, what goes there and how do we go about calculating it?
So remember, the calculation is property minus liabilities.
All right. Divided by 2.
You divide it by 2.
All right. Thank you.
Perfect. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we seem to be all right. Just a reminder, a couple things I just want to share with you before I go off, Again, if you missed something, just go have a look. Zukiswa is reloading everything on. So if you missed something, it will be there for you to go and have a look at. So don't stress about that. Outside of that, I'm trying to think the best way to approach an exam if I was in your shoes. What we have in this scenario is we have theory on testate law, then we have the practical side on intestate law, and then we have the theory on estates. And then we have the L&D account. So the L&D account is probably the toughest element. So I would leave that for last if I were you. Do the other stuff and get your marks. Ladies and gentlemen, your testate and intestate law and your theory on estates, you must be getting close to full marks for that. There's no reason not to get full marks for that. It is plain study work. Intestate law, look at my recording again if you've forgotten. Don't try and use your discretion. Just follow it rule by rule. If you are getting close to full marks for that aspect, then just by knowing how to draft an L&D is pretty much going to pull you through the exam. So my point being that there's a different tactical way to pass this exam. By doing good in the other aspects and doing a little bit dodge maybe in the L&D, you'll still pass. but doing good in the L&D could obviously get you that distinction at the end of the day. But I want you to really look at these notes, look at what I said, where I'm putting everything to. If you have forgotten before the exam, please look at the record again, all right? Just and make your notes as you go along. I think it's vital. If you follow that, I'm sure you will be okay, right? This is a very difficult exam, but it's an exam that actually should have a very high pass rate because there's a definite method to passing this particular exam, right? And I've tried to assist you with that method during these 5 days, right? So another aspect or maybe a tip, sometimes the struggle is time. I'm not too sure if you guys are time constrained or when it comes to this exam. If you are time constrained, which I assume you are, most people will take the most time because of the L&D account. So I would suggest you go and write out the L&D account a couple times the moment you left it off by heart, just to make sure you're not wasting any time when it comes to drafting the actual L&D in the exam. I would set aside probably about an hour to do the L&D account, right? That's how long it should take you plus minus in case you're trying to calculate how much time you can spend on each aspect. Okay, but from my side, obviously I'm fully aware of the fact that, you know, it is much tougher to present a subject like this over Teams because of the amount of practical elements there too. I mean, it's not like I can talk to you about theory for 5 days. So I hope these pages I've sent through does assist you in some or other way. And I'm sure if you miss something, the recordings will cover you. Ultimately, it was nice spending some time with all of you this week. I mean, we were a large group. I mean, we varied between 300 to 400 people consistently. And I think we actually, after our shaky start on Monday, we recovered really well. There wasn't too many issues with anyone. Everyone actually was on point. So from my side, thank you very much. And we'll probably see each other in the future sometime. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kicksman. Thank you so much for.
Thanks, Kyle. All the best.
All the best.
Thank
you.
Thank
you.
Bye.
Thank you, Carl. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All the best, guys. Practice.
Thanks,
Kai. Each other. Bye, Kai.
Oh, sounds like a child. A child is in. A child got a degree, doing an advanced course in law.
Yes.
Doing an advanced course in law.
Yes.
The youngest lawyer.
What grade you in? What grade you in?
Preschool.
You preschool. Do you even remember to brush your teeth in the morning?
I did.